Good morning, everybody. My name is Jim Sugarman, one of the co-founders of 4Gen Now, and today we have a special guest, one of the earliest and most supportive followers and community members of our 4Gen Now community, Cassie Widobro, who is a HeartMath certified trainer and speaker, author, and TEDx presenter as well, and we'll get to that. But Cassie, thank you very, very much for making time for us, for our community. And without further ado, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay. Well, thank you so very much for that wonderful introduction. And it's been my pleasure to be part of this community since the get-go. Really, I believe in it. And I am so very happy that I'm able to do this webinar for you. So I'll get going unless you have anything else, Jim.
Nope.
Okay. Let's do it then. The title of my webinar today, or my talk today, is Gen Z, Listen and Be Heard, Managing the Intergenerational Workforce with HeartMath Tools. And I'll explain what HeartMath is here in a minute. No need to do it quite yet, but I want to make sure that we define who Gen Z is first of all. Of course, this presentation is for everybody, but I hone in on Gen Z specifically. The generation, you know, we have many ranges right now for generations, but right now it would seem that Gen Z is a generation anywhere between 2 years old to 20 years old, and in essence these are the people who are in the education system right now, be it kindergarten, elementary school, junior high, high school, even first couple of years of college. So that is who this talk goes to, but again, it goes to pretty much anybody who needs a little bit of harnessing of that pause of thinking before speaking and listening so that we can be heard. Why Gen Z though? Why do I concentrate on Gen Z? And I tell you what, Gen Z, I know that they are the new leaders of our world. And it is my mission to have a hand in showing them how to lead the world in a more coherent way. And all other generations are their bosses right now. And I aim to create an intergenerational understanding between all other generations and Gen Z who are just coming into the workforce, at least the latter half of Gen Z or the older half of Gen Z. And all other generations, such as my own, will be handing over the baton to Gen Z at one point for their leadership. And I want Gen Z to take that baton confidently and lead our world from the heart with compassion and understanding, because I believe leadership should be comprehensive of so many things, and especially of compassion and heart. But how do I do this? It's an interesting question, really. How, with what, and why? So I'll tell you. First of all, the how is really easy for me to explain. I don't know, easier said than done, but by understanding that they have the power to lead from a place of understanding and respect. I believe that all do, and I want to make sure that Gen Z never misses that chance to lead from the place of understanding and respect. With what? We're going to talk about it, and it's going to be, my platform is with HeartMath Tools. I'm a HeartMath certified trainer. I'll explain to you briefly what that is, and I'll give you one or two techniques as to how to keep that in mind for your conversations. And why? Why do I do this? I believe that our world needs our coherence. And coherence, of course, just having those conversations that are based out of respect and understanding. We'll define it a little more here in a minute, hopefully. But first of all, let me give you a little background, because this is where I really just like to tell you a story, really, to get into why we need this in our world, I believe. Better communication, and why Gen Z can listen and be heard and have more coherent communication and create a more coherent world from a place of leadership. So the first thing I want to do is tell you a story as to why I do this. And let me tell you what. Many years ago, I worked for this company that was an incredible company to work for. Pleasant company, really cool people. And it just so happened that my boss and I were okay. You know, we got along okay. It wasn't like the best relationship nor the worst, but it was just okay. I mean, there were certain things that I really didn't per se appreciate about her leadership, where there was a little bit of a difference in age range, and that's fine. Anyway, we were able to handle the workplace just fine, however. Well, like it happens in corporate America sometimes, this smaller company was bought out by a bigger company. And this bigger company came in and restructured management. And that turn of events, my boss, Lena, we'll call her, Lena became my coworker. So she was no longer my boss. We were coworkers. And that relationship was an incredible relationship. I mean, we were able to get along famously. We worked together well. I mean, the whole thing went just as best as you could expect. And really, we became friends. Well, about 9 months later, the company decided to restructure again. And in that restructure, our director, Dana, who was from a different generation, an older generation, asked Lena to be my boss again. But Dana knew that there had been some kind of, disagreements before. So she wanted to make sure that we were all okay. So she said, hey, let me fly in and moderate a meeting between the two of you to make sure that this relationship is going to be okay again. Well, okay, that was very, very good intentions. And I understood why she wanted to do that. But I still believe that the first thing that should have happened is a conversation between Lena and I first about this. But anyway, Dana flies in. We all get in a room. We're talking. But Dana, being as a different human being, obviously, than us, didn't work with us day to day, was our director who flew in from somewhere else. And in my opinion, she was also a different generation and liked to do things differently. So for her, we got in that room and she just started asking me, Cassie, can you tell me about the reasons why you didn't like Lena's leadership style? Can you tell me why? Can you give me examples? Let's talk about this. And for me, with my type of personality and being of a different, perhaps, generation, I felt a little uncomfortable. I thought, boy, I really wish this conversation had just happened between Lena and me first, and then Dana come in. And she kept asking probing questions. Again, I understood why she wanted to know. And I thought maybe it wasn't for me to be asked questions in such a manner. So eventually, while I wasn't speaking because I didn't want to say the wrong thing, I didn't know how to handle that. So she asked a question. I still can't remember what the tipping point was, but I answered in a less than desirable way. I won't tell you exactly what I said because it was by no means was it to the point of being absolutely disrespectful, but I could feel the quickening of anger in me for being pressured to talk about this in a way that I didn't want to talk about it. And I didn't know how to handle the emotion inside of myself. So I just basically, at one point, even turned to Lena and said, I just couldn't do it. I didn't understand. I mean, the things that were coming out of my mouth were not complete sentences. I obviously was in a little bit of an emotional reaction. And eventually we just ended the conversation because we couldn't have a conversation. I had become emotional at the probing questions. Lena was there and it was just a hot mess. And so what Dana ended up doing was, separating us, because at that point I had said things that, again, were maybe not so piercing, but Lena wasn't expecting. And again, it should have happened just between the two of us. So I felt really bad about some of the things that I had communicated, especially emotionally. And Dana said to me, you know what, Cassie, I think that you need to work on your response. And I said, okay. And I was really grateful that that's really all that I got from her. There are so many things she could have done and said, but she understood, Dana, also that maybe she had put us in an awkward position and that we needed to figure it out on our own, and that I needed to take a moment and breathe. And that right now it wasn't the time to talk to Lena again, but the time to work on myself. And she gave me that chance. And she asked me to work on my communication and composure for the next little while. And honestly, I took it so seriously. I wanted to work on my communication because again, it's not like I was offensive in my response to Lena, but I couldn't articulate it in a way that would be beneficial or constructive to either one of us in the future if she were to become my boss again. So the first thing that I did was read. I read a lot of books, and in that time frame, I also started to meditate, and it was great. And one of the books that I picked up, I just kept reading personal development groups. I interviewed a lot of the C people in our company just to see how they handled stress and communication, and that moment where you just want to spew out, but you don't, because obviously they're in a place where they can't have that type of reaction. And if they do, it doesn't look so well. And so I did all of these things, and almost at the very end of my research on myself, I came up on the book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey. And many of you might have heard of this book, maybe even read it. And for me, it was an impactful book because in this book, Stephen Covey, who's the author of the book, tells a personal story. Now, if you've read this book and you know the 7 habits, those are fantastic habits. But this little chapter that I'm about to tell you about, it's at the very end. And if you blinked or if you put down the book after the 7th habit, then you missed it, because it's only like 4 or 5 pages where he tells this super personal story that impacted me and sent me into this work that I do today, really. That and other things, but this book had a lot of impact on me as to how to find out that better communication. So he tells the story, and I'll definitely condense it for you, but in essence, he is in a place, he's working, he's doing his thing, you know, he's Stephen Covey, he's a writer, he's a teacher. And he also says that there were some aspects of communication with his wife that could have definitely been better. So one day he finds himself walking about, and he goes into a library. And just by random, he picks a book. He picks up a book. And I can almost guarantee you I know which book it is, but he never mentions it in the story, so I won't quote it. He picks up a book, he opens it, and he says that his eyes fell upon a paragraph that powerfully influenced the rest of his life. And I thought, what paragraph is this? So I keep reading. And Stephen Covey explains that basically there's a gap or space between the stimulus and response. And for me, that basically means the person speaking and the person responding. And I thought, well, of course there's a gap. He's basically talking about the space of thinking before speaking. That is nothing new. And I thought, oh, well, I was a little disappointed. I thought he was really going to give us something. But then he does. He says, he makes the super bold claim that when he read that, he realized that the key to both our growth and happiness is how we use that space. And I thought, the space between thinking before speaking, between stimulus and response, first speaker, second speaker, and how we use the space in between. He's saying that that space is the key to both our growth and happiness. And I thought, well, that is such a bold claim. What do you mean? Anyway, I keep reading. And he decided to make use of the space by going home, talking to his wife. And they decide that for 1 year, 1 year, they would talk to each other using the space mindfully every night for 2 hours. Now, I don't know what part of where you fall in the generational spectrum, but I'm not so sure that I could have, or at least I wasn't able to have at the point that I read the book, a 2-hour conversation face to face. I mean, I'll do it maybe through text or chat, but at that point, when he says that he was having a conversation with his wife, 2 hours a night for 1 year face to face, I thought, wow, they really were talking to each other in order to find out how to use that gap. Anyway, he gives examples as to how it went, and it was a really good time for them. And they found out a deeper connection. He even says that they fell more in love with each other because while they were having these conversations and in any disagreement that they had, and they were able to talk about and hold that space, that gap for each other, they were able to get to the bottom of things from the inside out. He said that they had been working sometimes from the outside in, or he says at any point that anybody works from the outside in. It's basically like putting a Band-Aid on the problem, or like taking an aspirin. You fix it for now, but you're not really getting to the depth of that problem. Well, they did by using that gap. And so they were able to fix a lot of their stuff from the inside out, and their relationship bloomed. And when I read that book, I realized, man, that's what happened between Lena and I. You know, we were never able to really resolve their differences from the space of boss-employee. And so we became co-workers. We were cool because we didn't have to talk about those differences. But when it was time for her to possibly be my boss again, all of that resentment that I had held exploded. And it wasn't until we were able to, little by little, agreeing with each other, talking, really working it out, respecting each other after that emotional conversation happened, that we were able to really get into the deeper root as to what had happened and have a better relationship. And I'm happy to say now, a few years later, that Lena and I are friends again, and that's fantastic. Now, I have to add something to Stephen Covey's story, which he says plenty of excellent things in this book, but I also had to say that if I had to add something, I would have to say that, yes, there's understanding between two people. And you definitely, if you want to get into a conversation, create that space for one another. But both parties have to be willing. Because I tell you what, had I been willing to fix my relationship with my friend, but she hadn't been willing, it wouldn't have worked. You cannot talk to yourself. We cannot talk to each other alone and try to fix our relationship. We can work on our personal development and then go from there. But it doesn't work if the other person's not willing to have that conversation. But thankfully, Lena was. And so today I try to use that gap as much as I possibly can, but I am not perfect. And I always believe that the teacher still has something to learn. So I teach this all the time. But I tell you what, sometimes I make mistakes. And when I do make mistakes, and I don't really call it a mistake, I call it a learning opportunity. When I don't use that gap very well, I remind myself to forgive myself because I am working on it. And it's just something so important to be able to understand that we are human and that we're going to fumble the ball here and there and to just recover, start again. So Gen Z, it is so important for me that you know this. And please use that gap better than I did, because when you get to the workforce, if you're not there yet, and we're going to transition now from my story to how I really want to help you and how HeartMath plays a part into this. Because I have been looking for a way to really have tools to utilize the space, because this space is so broad. And especially when you want to have a reaction, when someone says the wrong thing to you, you just want to say it. You just want to respond, not even respond, react and say it. Well, there's always that space. Believe it or not, even if it's a millisecond, there's a space. And even though the gap sometimes looks like a millisecond, you can make it longer. How do I make it 3, 5, 10 seconds? Because in that gap, we can think. Remember, in that gap, we have the choice for growth and happiness. And even though we want to state our point of view and be like, I'm right, I know I'm right, and this person is wrong, sometimes the gap allows you to understand that maybe it's not worth it right now. That you just need to let it go for now. And even though you really want to say your truth on how you see it and how it is and how that person is wrong, that's maybe not the best thing to do. Okay? So we'll talk about HeartMath tools and how they play a role in that gap so that we can expand that gap. But for now, I want to tell you that when you get to the workforce, if you're not there yet, it is highly likely that you'll have the best boss ever and that they will want to take you under their wing. But sometimes they don't. And sometimes they'll see you as young, and sometimes maybe they'll possibly boss you around because they're your boss. And some even impose their point of view on you because they're older and wiser. It's possible. I'm only telling you this from experience. If it doesn't happen to you, fantastic. Now, whether that's the case or not, though, whether you have a boss that's incredible and wants to listen, or a boss that's also a very good boss but wants to manage from that point of view only, it is very important for me that you understand Gen Z in being the youngest generation in the workforce right now. It is so important for me that you understand that you can open that field of communication to one another and realize that whatever it is that this person's saying to you, whether they're giving you orders or understanding your point of view, that you can create a more coherent communication. Because a more coherent communication needs to happen between all the generations. And if we do this, then it doesn't matter what generation we're from, the communication will still be the same, will still be good if we can create that gap. Because all of us try so hard. I think I will give us all the benefit of the doubt and say that we try to think before we speak, because this is a tale as old as time. I promise you that I'm not telling you right now anything that you haven't heard before. It is important that we think before we speak, but just as it's a tale as old as time, it's probably the thing that we keep working on the most. We know that we should think before we speak, and it is something that sometimes we can't harness as well. So, and when we can't harness it, it turns out that we end up saying the wrong thing, like I did. Or if we don't say the wrong thing, if we are sitting in a conversation where the conversation has potentially become stressful, and you know that if you talk, you'll say the wrong thing, then we don't talk and we shut down, and then we become resentful and we allow it to come out in a different way later, even by sarcasm, or maybe even bullying verbally one another, or maybe we recluse. None of those options are going to work for communication. None of them. Especially in the intergenerational workplace, it's incredibly important to create that communication, because a lot of people have been in the workforce for a long time. And sometimes the older generations may not open up to listening to the younger generations, and the younger generations come in with a certain point of view that kind of shuts down the older generation. So it's important to create that balance. So how do we do this? What I want to do today is teach you how to respond in a better way and take you away from reacting to create, again, a better response. We want to create a bigger gap. Okay? So let me tell you, I'm going to nerd out a little bit and tell you about HeartMath and how this plays a role. HeartMath, the HeartMath Institute has been around since 1991. And since 1991, they have researched and developed reliable and scientifically based tools to help people bridge the connection between their hearts and their minds, and deepen the connection with one another. And so that sounds kind of like, what does that have to do with it? Well, when we bridge the connection between our brain and our heart, a lot of magic happens, because the heart and the brain talk to one another. And today, I cannot get into the whole logistics of the science because we only have a few more minutes left. But I guarantee you it's mind-blowing. And when we think, well, we just need to think before we speak, you have no idea how much the heart helps us in that. But right now, I'll tell you this. HeartMath tools don't teach you to bite your tongue. They teach you to breathe into giving the right response. And that's important. And I know that you've heard of mindfulness and meditation, which is fantastic. And meditation is a practice that I do today still, even after those years of learning it, when the anecdote I told you earlier happened, because that's when I started meditating. I do it today, and it's fantastic. And I know some of you do as well. What I learned about meditation was this. It helps me very much in the morning and at night. But when I get into a place where, I'm in a position where I could possibly react to something that someone said, I wish I could say, hold on a second, this is making me really mad. I have to go meditate right now to calm down. I wish I could say that, but I can't. So that is where HeartMath comes in, because HeartMath gives you the tools to stand in that gap and create a space for a bigger response while you're talking to that person. So HeartMath is a very movable tool because it creates coherence, and coherence is basically an alignment of your immune system, nervous system, your body, and your systems are aligned so that you're not stressed out. Because what happens is we get stressed out and then we want to respond. Well, we must be in alignment in order to create a better answer. And that is what HeartMath does. On the spot, creating a better answer. Sounds good, huh? I'm going to teach you. I know. This is fantastic. I'm so excited. And as a reminder, I think I've said this before, but HeartMath has a few different tools, up to 9 really, that we can use. Today, I'm really going to be going into one main one, but we're going to start with the basic step of breathing, because we have to remember how to breathe in order to build up. Okay, so I'll teach you the 2 basic ones, and hopefully this serves you for your conversations this week or in the future. Again, when you become incoherent, frustrated, or angry, you're not doing anybody any favors by responding or talking from that point of view. In fact, people may become defensive, and that type of communication never really goes well. It becomes an argument, in fact. And so Gen Z, what the world needs, in my opinion, is for you to have the capacity to prepare and adapt in the face of stress, challenge, or adversity. So when someone comes at you with something, you can use this tool, take a few seconds. It doesn't take anything but 5 seconds sometimes, and come from a better place. And even if you know that after those 5-10 seconds have gone by that you can't reply from a better place, at least it gives you the chance to say, even out loud, you know what? Right now, this conversation isn't working out, and I can see that. So I'm going to personally take some time and come back to it. And then you can walk away, knowing that you, at least, if you didn't have the response that you wanted, that you didn't create a more of a break in that communication. So it's very important for me that you remember this step. So we're going to get into it. We're just going to get into it. Okay. Now, I would like to tell you, first of all, that the reason why I'm not showing you the slides from the HeartMath Institute is because they're proprietary and confidential. However, I am able to tell you the steps. Okay. But if we ever do a one-on-one session, of course, I will be able to show you these slides. But right now, I am absolutely allowed to talk you through the steps, but again, not showing you on the screen. The first thing that I like to tell people is that we need to remember to breathe. In fact, I have a friend. She says, you know what, people tell us to breathe all the time, but they don't tell us how. And I think it's because we assume that we know how to breathe. Obviously, I'm breathing right now, and so are you if you're listening to this webinar or watching this webinar. But it is so important that we start breathing slowly, and especially if we feel that quickening happening in ourselves, where we want to just like say, we just want to say it, we just want to reply, we want to respond, we want to react. It's important to breathe. And how do we breathe? I want to tell you that the first thing that the HeartMath Institute teaches is heart-focused breathing. We're going to do this together, and you're going to be like, this is not rocket science, but we have to do it. We have to remind ourselves of the basics of how to breathe. Because if we don't, if we take the second technique without doing the first one, it may not work as well, okay? So heart-focused breathing is a powerful breathing technique and tool for self-regulation. Again, regulating our emotions, that stress, to be in alignment. It is the first step in shifting to a more coherent or aligned state, while being alert and calm all the time. Again, I wish we could meditate in the middle of an argument, but this tool teaches you to still be alert, but calm. And heart-focused breathing can help you maintain composure in challenging situations. So how do we do this? So I'm going to do it with you. I'm going to talk you through it. And I'm going to do it as well because fortunately, breathing happens with our eyes closed or our eyes open. So we can do it together. So if you could do me a favor, the very first step and the most important step is focusing your attention in the area of the heart. Imagine your breath just normally. We're going to breathe here in just a minute, but just normally. Imagine your breath is flowing in and out of your heart or chest area, breathing now a little slower and deeper than usual. And I'm going to suggest an inhalation of 5 seconds, an exhalation of 5 seconds. So let's go. One more time. And it already feels a little better. That's how we breathe, right? We breathe normally, but when we heart focus breathe, we first of all have to focus in that area, the area of the heart, and breathe from there. Breathe from there, and it feels really good. Really good. One more time. And if you need a quick reminder for yourself in the middle of the day, just remember heart-focused breathing. That immediately puts you in a space of, what was that again? 5 seconds in, 5 seconds out from the area of the heart. From the area of the heart specifically. That's very important. Not from your throat or your stomach, from the area of the heart. Okay? Now, if we were doing this face-to-face, I would show you. I'm able to hook you up to a little monitor and actually show you what your pulse and your heart rate looks like, the variability of your heart rate. But right now, we're just going to do it. Breathing easy. Now, we've already taken more than a minute doing this, so you're like, wow, how do I do that in a conversation? Don't worry. We're going to get to that. When you really think about it, it's only 5 seconds. In fact, let's get to that right now. You're having a conversation and you can tell that things are getting a little odd, a little frustrating, and you're becoming a little stressed out. Your alignment is shifting from aligned to misaligned, and you want to bring it back to that coherent state. So as soon as that person is talking, you don't even have to wait until they're done and create that gap. As soon as they are saying something that you think may put you in a bad headspace, start heart-focused breathing. Just start it, okay? And the first thing is, again, to breathe. So now I'm going to get you to the second technique. Again, these are going to go really fast. And you want to practice them, but right now I'm just going to give them to you so that you at least have them as a tool in your toolbox. From heart-focused breathing, which is just the basics on how to breathe easy, we're going to go into what's called the Inner Ease technique, trademarked by the HeartMath Institute. And this is a self-regulation technique as well. And so ease means moving through your day with your mind and your emotions in balance. Now, inner ease, what we're going to do here in just a minute, is not a sleepy-headed state. It's a regenerative state in which you are more alert and resilient and can respond more effectively. Inner ease is an aspect of stillness that we can access on the move. This is what is so important about the HeartMath Institute. We have tools that we can do on the go. Okay? And being in a state of ease doesn't mean that you necessarily have to slow down your physical state, but it can mean that at times. For example, an EMT, think of an EMT. They need to respond quickly to an emergency while remaining calm and composed on the inside. That is what we want to achieve. Inner ease. Yeah, things may be happening on the outside, like maybe an uncomfortable conversation, but you stay calm and with ease on the inside. And ease creates a sensitivity to the appropriate inner pace for handling each situation in life. So now, I'm going to talk you through the steps. And the first step the first step that we already did, which is heart-focused breathing. So let's do it. Focus your attention in the area of the heart. Imagine your breath is flowing in and out of the heart or chest area. Breathing a little slower and deeper than usual. And the suggestion is again, 5 seconds in, 5 seconds out. So let's do it. Okay. That's the first step. Step number 2. Keep on breathing for me as we go to step number 2. With each breath, draw in the feeling of inner ease to balance your mental and emotional energy. Draw in the feeling of inner ease. What does inner ease mean to you at this point? Is it taking a walk with your dog? Is it reading a book alone on your favorite chair or couch? Is it being with your significant other? Is it drinking water in the morning and feeling alive? Is it sitting on the grass? What is inner ease? We have to tap in an emotion that you're already familiar with, that your memory has in you, so that we can regenerate that feeling on the spot. And we're going to do that with each breath. With each breath, you draw in that feeling of inner ease, that feeling of walking with your puppy, that feeling that makes you smile, because that is going to create a balance of mental and emotional energy on the spot. The last step, so we've breathed, we're creating a feeling of inner ease, but the last step is crucial. Now that you've done the first 2, you have to set a meaningful intent to anchor the feeling of inner ease as you engage in your projects, challenges, or daily interactions. Let me say that again. After you've taken those deep breaths for a few seconds, after you've thought about what brings you ease as you're breathing and this conversation is happening, you then have to set, so important, you have to set the meaningful intent to anchor that feeling of ease as you're engaging in this conversation or project or challenge. Why is this so important? Because this conversation is happening. You already know where it's going. And if it begins to stress you out, you can begin to breathe. You can begin to think about that which makes you so happy, which for me is reading. I can get lost in reading so much. And it just brings me a feeling of a meditative state almost, just that ease. And I'm doing this while a conversation is happening and I'm still nodding. I'm still paying attention to this person. And before I respond, I make sure to anchor that feeling of ease that reading brings to me. And from that space, I can say, that is an interesting point of view. Tell me more. Or, let me make sure I understood what you said and say it. Or, you know what? Right now I can tell this conversation is getting a little bit heated. What do you mean it's getting heated? Well, I can feel it for myself. So if you don't mind, maybe this isn't happening to you. But for me, I need to take a minute. I'm going to walk away. I'm going to come right back to you. Whatever it is your answer is, make sure you take that time. Let's say that time didn't happen. This conversation is happening, and they're like, blah, blah, blah. And then you didn't take the time and you go, ah! And then this just like starts to happen. But this is happening. And while this is happening, you're saying, you remember what makes you feel good. And you, most importantly, anchor in it in those few seconds. And then you create a feeling of peace in your body. And then you say, interesting. Tell me more. What I heard you say is, I'm going to walk away right now, but I'll be back with you. I just need to take a minute and a breath. It is the crux of a conversation when we take that moment and expand it. And again, I've gone through these techniques in almost 10 minutes. Do they happen in 10 minutes? Not at all. Not at all. You can do it in a few seconds. We can make that gap bigger. But I tell you what, I've learned HeartMath techniques. I've become a HeartMath certified trainer because these techniques work. And some people say, well, that's just breathing. No. Breathing is the first step. You have to create the feeling of inner ease, and then you have to keep it. And then you can reply. People skip the steps. Why? Because we just want to respond. We want to react. We want to tell them our point of view because they're wrong. Or because our point is right. It doesn't matter, guys. I gave up trying to be right a long time ago because it didn't get me anywhere. Even if I'm right and the conversation's not going well, it really is best to take a minute, breathe, so that the right response comes to you, whether it is replying in a certain way, asking for more information, walking away, or whatever you think is best for that conversation. Okay? And like I was saying, I've learned all of these techniques for myself. And they are great. And for me, these techniques are step number 2. So important, step number 2. And you're like, but you didn't go through step number 1, because I'm going to tell you what step number 1 is right now. And there's the simplest, fastest step. The first step in having a coherent conversation and listening, Gen Z, so that then you can be heard, is to make the choice. Make the choice. Be aware of your conversations and make the choice that you are going to employ these techniques in your conversations. Because I can tell you all these 9 skills all day long, but if you don't first make the choice that you are going to have better conversations, the skills won't serve you. So make the choice that you want to be a more coherent speaker, and then use the HeartMath tools. That is what I had to say to you, Gen Z, because people will respect you more. I believe in overall, people respect more someone who can give a coherent, sensical response than someone who's flying off the handle. So listen and be heard, Gen Z. Get coherent, practice, and have great intergenerational conversations. Thank you very much.
Cassie, fantastic. Fantastic.
Thank you, Jim. I appreciate it. Do you have any questions for me?
Yes. So let me make sure I get this right, okay?
Yes.
Creating a bigger gap as a way to create more coherent conversation between all generations in the intergenerational workforce.
Absolutely.
Cassie, I was doing this along, as I hope everyone watching and participating in this will do, not just because you're doing it, but because it works. I mean, it's so easy to respond immediately.
Yes.
I mean, heart focused breathing. So you mentioned that there are other techniques. So let our community know, for follow-up questions to you personally, how do they get in touch with you?
Thank you, Jim, for asking that. Yes, I'm able to get in touch with people through social media, of course. My Facebook page is just my name, Cassie Huidobro. They're able to get a hold of me.
Spell that for us.
Yes, absolutely. Yes, so CASSYHUI, D as in Danny, O, B as in boy, RO. That is my Facebook page. The other way that people can get a hold of me is simply through email, that is my full name, Cassandra, CASSAN as in Nancy, D as in Danny, RA, dot HUI, D as in Danny, O, B as in boy, RO at gmail.com. And I'm happy really to answer any questions. The techniques keep on building on each other. Again, the very first step is realizing that breathing is important and that we might have forgotten that longer breaths do create a sense of calmness in us.
Awesome. And lastly, Cassie, I understand you're an author and a speaker of note. Please share with our community members a little bit about both, please.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for asking. So I had the good fortune to be able to publish this book that is called Is Anyone Else Feeling the Same Way? And it is on Amazon. It has received really great reviews, which pleases me. And this book is it's a memoir, and it's a spiritual journey of my own in which I really define certain things that, throughout my life were uncomfortable to ask, but by really getting inside of myself, developing and really creating that gap in understanding, I've been able to ask and resolve. So that's what this book is about. And then I was very happy to be asked to do a TEDx talk in Colorado Springs last November. And this talk was about one of the topics that I'm passionate about, really, is creating that gap and really going inside ourselves and responding and reacting in the best way possible to our racial divide here in the United States. So again, all of them, though, if anything, really, whether it's intergenerational, spiritual, or anything uncomfortable, what it comes down to, in my opinion, is creating that gap for better conversation and communication.
Fantastic. Cassie, thank you. You stay well. And we're going to see you at the upcoming summit. A little shameless promotion
yes.
on October 12th at CU South Denver. Thank you very, very much, Cassie.
My pleasure. Thank you so much, Jim.